I'm Lorelei Day with the City of San Angelo. Today we're here with Morgan and Carlos talking about animal services. Let's start out by talking about the requirements of pet owners. What are pet owners inside city limits required to do with their animals?
Of course, there are state laws that govern pet ownership and things that you need to do for your pets, but then there's a number of local laws that the council has adopted that we ask San Angelo residents to comply with as well. And so one of the first of those is state law requires that you register your pet. And if you owned pets 20 years ago, you might remember going to the vet and having like a physical form you filled out. Locally, San Angelo interpreted that as we just require your pet to be microchipped. And that can be through animal services. We offer the microchip for $13, no annual fee. It's a great option for folks. But you also may get a microchip just through your own veterinarian, through the rescue group or breeder where you originally got the pet. Any of those will work. As long as the pet has a microchip, we count that as the registration. So that's the first thing that's required. And that's for any cats and dogs over 4 months of age. One other thing that pet owners are required to do is state law actually requires a rabies vaccine. We certainly recommend that your dogs get like the distemper parvo combo and that your cats get the rhino panleukopenia vaccine, but the rabies vaccine is required by state law. That is also for pets 4 months of age or older. And that is something, some folks ask me, like, if you get deep into it, does it have to be the 1-year vaccine, the 3-year vaccine? We just defer to the medical professionals on that. If your veterinarian says your pet's eligible for the 3-year and that's what you take advantage of, that's good with us. We're just looking for that compliance on keeping your pet current on a rabies vaccine. One other thing that is required is cats and dogs inside city limits must be spay-neutered. So same thing, 4 months of age or older, your pet cats and your pet dogs are required to be spay-neutered at your own expense. Definitely there are low-cost options to take advantage of and reach out for. And there are a few exceptions for folks that have concerns about that, like if their pet is 4 months of age but is still quite small or had some medical event. Anything medically fragile, even a senior dog or a pet with pretty advanced medical issues, that's an exemption. We just ask for a documentation from your veterinarian to prove that. We put that on file. That's golden with us. Another exemption would be if it's a registered show dog. So if you're in the American Kennel Club and your pet is registered to be in an event where they're required to be intact, sure, just provide that kind of documentation. We'll mark that as an exemption as well. Another exemption would be if you're a registered breeder and you pay the annual fee to be a permitted breeder. That's one other exemption. But by and large, your average pet, cat and dog, is required to be spay-neutered inside city limits. One other requirement is around, we get a lot of questions about, does my pet have to be secure? Does my pet have to be locked up, in a fence? Whatever that may be. And so for cats are allowed to free roam. So there's no requirement that cat owners have to keep their cats on their property in a backyard. Just the nature of cats in general, they are allowed to free roam. That's an important component of a cat's life and thriving and doing well. If neighbors have concerns that cats are free roaming and they either think it's a safety issue for the cat, like it's not a cat that gets out of traffic if a car's driving by, or that the cat's exhibiting some nuisance behavior like digging in your garden, fighting, anything like that, we do have resources on our website about cat nuisance behavior and how to mitigate that. But by and large, there's no enclosure requirement around cats. For dogs, there is that you are required to keep your dogs secure. So if you have a good fenced-in backyard, you're golden. If you opt to build like a separate kennel for your dog to house them, that is satisfactory as well. It has to be a certain square footage. They have to have access to shelter, water, all of those things all the time. But you are required to keep your dog secure at all times.
Okay, so there's obviously reason behind the requirements. Let's go back to microchipping and spay-neutering in specific. Tell us about why it's so important to follow those rules.
Microchips are important because in the event your pet gets out, in the event somebody finds it or it's picked up by an animal services officer, we want to be able to quickly get that pet back to you. Decreasing the length of stay or avoiding a shelter intake at all, it's what's best for the pet because the stress that's involved in that. It's what's best for the pet owner because then you avoid the impound fees and fines and all of that, and we get that pet back to you quickly. It also prevents stress on a really overtaxed system, that anything that's a shelter intake, anything that is coming into that system really takes the place of other animals in need, that we exist to serve the most vulnerable pets and people, and if your own dog got out for a moment, that's not the most vulnerable pet, and so we want to be able to get it back to you quickly. So if you haven't yet got your pet microchipped, at least get it tagged, any tag that you can get with your contact information on it while you do go ahead and get that microchip handled. But that's what's really important, is just to be diligent about, taxpayer dollars and the contributions to animal services are used and focused on just those most vulnerable pets. The requirement for spay-neuter is really important because one, it prevents a lot of nuisance behavior. We get a lot of calls from folks looking to rehome their cat or dog, struggling with some kind of behavior or issues with that cat or dog, and a lot of those complaints that we're getting can be managed and resolved with spay-neuter and having that animal altered. But one reason why it was important to actually adopt into law for San Angelo is because we've struggled with a pet overpopulation crisis for more than a decade. And so we thought it was important to place spay-neuter actually on the books as a law, where you are required to spay-neuter your pet to prevent unwanted litters. That just the number of puppies and kittens coming into the shelter system was unmanageable. And we've had a lot of progress towards that, particularly around cats, but we continue to be inundated with dogs. And so we know that the spay-neuter enforcement is important and an important tool to prevent those unwanted litters, but we also recognize that it's a luxury a lot of San Angeloans can't afford. So that's why we like to match folks with the low-cost spay-neuter option. We want you to take advantage of that before it becomes an issue, but in the event we have to come out because your pet was loose, because it's an unaltered male and they're more prone to roam, or your pet bit somebody because it's a female who's recently had a litter and was being protective, then those are things that really escalate and again tax an overburdened system, and an animal services officer actually has to come out and do that primary enforcement of, hey, your dog was loose or your dog bit, but then that secondary of enforcement, which is you have to have your pet spay neutered, and so you are receiving a citation as a result of failing to do so.
How many pets can be in one residence legally? We do see that question a lot, and I think there's some confusion out there. And talk about the importance of why there's a limit.
I might pitch that to Carlos.
Okay, so the amount you can have is up to 7 dogs without a permit. And the reason is because of overpopulation, we want to keep the numbers down. Of course, you have to do it with the 4 months of age. After that, you have to make sure you get a permit for that. And you get that at the animal shelter. You can fill out the application, we turn it in for you. But the number is 7 if they're 4 months of age. Now on cats, there's no limit. You can have all the number of cats you like, but you do have to make sure that they're all altered, microchipped, and have a rabies shot as well, though. We do try to prevent overpopulation on cats as well.
Another question we often see, or concern really, is different types of animals. Tell us about which animals are and are not allowed in city limits.
Well, you mean to be owned?
Yes.
Okay, so you're allowed, of course, to have a dog or a cat. You're allowed fowl, hooved animals, but you have to have distance, 100 feet of distance if you have those animals. Now, if you have a pig, it has to be 500 feet to have one of those animals. But like prohibited animals, you're talking like a raccoon or a skunk, possum, so the kind of animals, monkeys.
It's defined as the ordinance as ungulate, so any hooved animal that's not sheep, goats, horse, so deer, camels, big cats, any kind of ocelot, jaguar, panther, for sure, prohibited inside city limits.
Okay, and when you say they need to be a certain amount of feet, a certain amount of feet away from
From the residence. So wherever the building at where somebody resides, if you have a horse, a chicken, animals like that, hood animals that are allowed, 100 feet. Unless it's a pig. If it's a pig, it has to be 500 feet. But of course, the mistake also some people make with the pig, it can be a potbelly pig is actually allowed. He just has to have a pseudo-rabies shot. That one doesn't require distance. But unless it's just a regular meat pig, you have to have 500 feet.
Moving over to how people can report things when they have an issue. I know y'all receive, I don't even know the number of calls y'all receive daily, but if someone experiences an animal-related issue, talk about the best ways that they can report that.
The best ways is we open up 8 o'clock. They can start calling the shelter if they want to turn in a complaint, or they can call the police department as well, depending on if it's after hours.
So there's an online form available at cosatx.us/animals. So if it's a non-time sensitive item, so anything that's like dog at large, livestock at large, a bite event, suspected cruelty, those are things that are pretty time sensitive. So definitely call us so we can come out and address those in a timely manner. But if it's something that's not time sensitive but still needs some attention, for example, I think my neighbor has chickens and I don't think they have distance, or I think my neighbor's pets are not altered. Can y'all check on that? Then that would just be, the online form is a great resource. That's something that's available, of course, any time of the day or night, even if we're not open for regular calls. And citizens can fill out that online form. It makes its way to an animal services officer, and you can turn it in anonymously if that's important to you. You can also provide your email address and phone number if you do want that follow-up. So if we say we got your online form, but we weren't exactly clear on the address of the subject property or what the allegation is, like we want to make sure that we follow up and have everything satisfied. You clearly have an animal concern and we take that seriously. So you can provide that contact information for us to do that, or you can be anonymous and simply turn it in that way.
So in every response, the Animal Services sends out an Animal Services officer. First off, how many officers are there available?
We have 4 officers available, and then I'm the supervisor.
Okay. Is this something, would you say you're understaffed, or is it, talk about the challenges?
I believe we're understaffed because people think when we get a phone call or a complaint that it's just, we just show up and it's just, here it is and it's 1, 2, 3 steps and we're done. Actually, it's more involved with that. It could be a cruelty issue. So if we suspect cruelty, then we have to investigate, take notes, and then we have to get maybe a warrant. So it's very time consuming. Same thing with the dog bite. We have to take pictures, get witness statements, do quite a bit of reporting. So it takes quite a bit of time. People don't realize that. So I believe, in my opinion, that we are understaffed.
Can you tell us from your perspective some of the types of calls you receive and respond to?
So we have many different calls. We could get a call for, it could be a simple animal that's just running at large, or it could be a dog bite, it could be an animal that's injured. And sometimes we also get calls for deceased animals on the road. It could be a deer, a raccoon, or a cat. And then, of course, cruelty to animals as well. And sometimes police calls for assistance as well. Maybe somebody got arrested and there's an animal in the vehicle. We got to get the animal out so they can tow the vehicle.
Which would you say is there a hierarchy of what's prioritized?
There's priority, yes, ma'am. Sometimes, a loose animal in the middle of the road causing a traffic jam, or somebody got bitten or injured animal, those are priority. Now, of course, like she said, there's a dog that's just possibly at large. They don't know if it's in a yard. They don't know if it's at large. Those are, yes, we do have a list of what we respond to quicker than the others.
So talking about emergencies, in the case of an animal-related emergency, what should people do?
Well, the emergency, call us right away. That way we can get out there and try to treat the animal right away, depending if it's bit somebody or if it's injured. They call us at the animal shelter and let us know right away, or the police department as well.
Now, something we all as San Angeloans know is that there's deer on the side of the road. There's all kinds of animals that get hit, and you see that, and our office also gets these calls. But what do people do whenever they see a dead animal, and what's the process? Is there a fee to pick those up?
It depends on the animal. Now, if it's a domesticated animal, it's on their property, we do charge $25 for that, unless they're elderly or disabled. Now, if it's wildlife, that's an animal that's not owned. It's wildlife, so we don't charge for that. We don't charge for a deer, raccoon, or skunk, possum, animals like that. But if it is a domesticated animal, it's on their property, we do charge. Now, if it's in the street, right away, we don't charge for that.
we want to address the public health and we want to address the public safety, and certainly a large animal in the roadway is a public safety issue. We want to address that. And certainly a deceased animal on your own property, in your front yard, in your backyard, something like that, that's a service we offer. We think that's super important to respond to. We want to make sure that your home is a safe place for us to be able to, for you to be able to continue to live and enjoy your property. But we do want to caution that, getting inundated with calls for, every deer on the side of the road is not something we could take on with our existing staffing.
Right. Would be a...
And going back to what you're asking about the time consumption, we might get calls all over the city. That takes quite a bit of time from the officer to have to go all over the city to pick up these deers and then dispose of them. And then we get another call, we have to go again to get more deer. So it is very time consuming, picking up quite a bit of deer during the season right now as well.
Because it is very seasonal, and so we'll put one animal services officer out of the rotation for calls, and they'll drive a specific vehicle because it's not your average dog catcher truck that can pick up, a large deer. And so we're deploying a specialty piece of equipment, taking an officer out of the rotation for calls for service to go do a roundup and hit the main areas through town that frequently have that call, for us to pick that up and address it.
And another thing also, like stress to the public, if they could also, we're also at risk out there because they're usually on the busy roads, and sometimes they pass real close to us. So if they could also keep an eye on us, and sometimes it takes two officers because the animal's rather large to get them up in the truck.
Animal Services has recently reported that bites are up. Can you talk about how, is there any way that citizens can help mitigate that?
Yeah, so for fiscal year 23, we reported over 260 bite cases that were animal to person. That's our, over 6,000 cases were worked last year. So is 260 cases concerning? It is to me. An animal biting a person is always a concern. And so the previous year we reported about 150. So we're 50% more bite cases in fiscal year 23 than the prior year. So that's really concerning to us, and we want San Angeloans to stay safe, and there are a few things that we think are driving that increase in bites. First, that's all species. So that could be a cat biting you. Even cat lovers can admit that even the nicest cat can bite, right? Any animal can bite, but even a nice cat, if pushed or injured or not feeling well or not handled properly, their first line of defense is to bite. So how many of that is cats? We're drilling down into that detail and getting it out to the council. A good bit of it is wildlife. And so we just caution San Angeloans that, if you have a wildlife nuisance problem in your area, like raccoons coming up to your house each evening, something like that, that's a real problem, then first we would ask, if you feed outside cats, start pulling food. Your cats will learn to eat on a schedule, and if you pull food at night, you're less likely to attract those nuisance species. Two, you're welcome to set a humane live trap and bait that, and we will relocate skunks and raccoons at no charge, since they are a higher risk for rabies. But once they are in a trap, leave them be. Don't pick up the trap and set it at the curb. You think you're helping us, but if that animal is able to reach through and even scratch, then that is a test event for us, and we are euthanizing that animal. So using the live traps, and it's a very hands-off procedure, and then once it's occupied, calling us to assist with that. I think that that will prevent bites quite a bit. And then just not approaching animals you don't know, or asking, I'm bringing my kids over. Is your dog nice? Is it okay that he's just loose with us, and not feeling uncomfortable advocating and saying, do you know what, my kids are kind of rude. Can you actually put your dog up for me, or before my kids come over? If grandma has a small breed dog that's a little nippy and you're bringing your toddler over, then I think it's fair to ask, like, hey, can we crate your dog while we're coming over? We want to keep people safe. We want to address that. Another issue that we think is contributing to increased number of bites is the increased calls for service for dog at large. That San Angeloans are struggling financially. My shelter is at capacity constantly, and so folks who are wanting to rehome their pet or financially unable to spay their dog, and then she gets pregnant, they are at their limit. And so we anecdotally know of cases where someone reached out for help, didn't immediately get help, moved out, left their dogs behind, or let their dogs loose, and that is, a dog at large can become a dog bite event. And so we are advocating for funding of more animal services officers because since they are staffed year-round, round the clock, and covering 60 square miles of calls for service, from everything from dead deer to wildlife in a trap to unaltered cat colony, then that is to be able to get enough attention to what starts out as not an emergency call. Dog at large is a high priority call, but not an emergency priority call, to address those high priority calls before they become an emergency.
And to touch on that as well, we can only do what the law allows us. And one issue we have sometimes with the public is they'll get bit by a dog, and we show up and we start talking about what needs to be done, and they decide they don't want to participate. They're like, nope, I don't know what dog bit me. I'm not going to fill out a statement. And that's just gonna, this dog already bit our cat, and he might go bite it again. So we encourage them to work with us and fill out the report and let us, follow it to its conclusion instead of saying, I want to participate, because that animal ends up biting again.
All right, well, we are out of time for today, but Morgan and Carlos, thank y'all so much for being here and for the information you shared.
Thank you.
For the City of San Angelo, I'm Lorelei Day.